Okay, this panel will be a little different than some of the others, but it touches on an important topic that has been hit upon in a lot of different things, and that is for how do we educate and how do we get kids involved in the right way so that they can protect our environments in the future. And so Jeremy's story and Spencer's story tie into that, and so that's what we're going to talk about. So let me just go ahead first and ask you guys to introduce.
So I'm Jeremy Currier. First off, I would like to start off with thanking everyone here because it's not every day that a 16-year-old gets this opportunity. So thank you. And another special thanks to my parents because I don't think I would be where I am now if I didn't have them. So that's where I want to start off. So yeah, I currently attend an online school at Oxford, and I'm currently dual enrolled as a student in OTech, Oxford School's technical campus. And that's a vocational school. I take computer networking there right now.
Me? I'm Janet Currier. I'm Jeremy's mom. We've been through this journey together. I find myself advocating not only for my son, but in hopes that telling our story, students like Jeremy might have a different outcome. He was expelled. I think it was a very harsh punishment. I think there were other things that could have been done. And I think we need to, as parents and as educators, start shaking the stigma of what is considered hacking. Jeremy gained access to the network. Hacking has always been a negative word that people throw around a lot. And we're just going to talk about our story here today. Thank you.
My name is Spencer York. I am currently a second semester junior at Lipscomb University, which is a very small private university in Nashville, Tennessee. My story is sort of similar to Jeremy's, but at a different outcome.
So just real quick on the way that I was introduced to Jeremy and his mom. So one of the initiatives that I've spoken about is a K-12 ISAC, and around that, one of the things I want to build is a SOC that could involve students and allow to take their skills and their talents and allow them a constructive way and a mentored way to use those skills to actually help their schools. And so we were on I guess Jeremy's mom was on and I were on a kind of a chat. I don't know, it was kind of a weird forum. But anyways, I mentioned that and she reached out, and then Doug Levin, who says hello, by the way, who's a mutual friend,
Yes.
got us connected and told me about this story. And I was like, oh, this is such a good story. Unfortunately, it wasn't handled well by the school that Jeremy went to. But now that they're talking about it, I hope that it does is it allows us to see, one, that there's good kids out there. They're not doing things with malicious intent. They're just curious. They're being kids. And that we can take that curiosity and channel it into a way that can help the schools and help other businesses become more secure. So with that said, if you guys just want to start, Jeremy, I guess let's start with this. When did you first start and find your interest in technology, and then from there, how did that progress into what happened at your school?
So I first gained my interest in computing back when I was 10, 11. I built my first computer. And I mean, every time I tell somebody that, they always get like surprised that a 10-year-old is able to build their own computer, but it's a lot more common than people think. And so I believe that kids should be educated from a very early standpoint on this kind of stuff. And yeah, so I started as 10, building my own computer. And from there, I was in 6th grade when I first gained access to my district's network. It was through a sticky note that was taped on top of a school computer that was a student login. So it was a student login that had access to administrative tools that I was able to use to gain access to the network. So it wasn't like I was hacking anyone's password. It was like it was written right there. And I was 12 when that happened, yeah.
And one question for you, Janet. So what did you do to facilitate Jeremy's curiosity with technology? How did you, you as his parents, get him involved and just help him do that? Because I think that's an important thing.
Right. like he said, when he was 10 or 11 years old, we had bought the tools he needed and the components he needed to build his first computer. I was with him, but after his first computer, he just took off. He knew exactly how to put it together again. In fact, it was, I think he'll laugh when we remember this time, Jeremy had put together his first computer, and there was something about one of the fans that he wasn't quite happy with. Wasn't working quite right on the computer. So I walked into his room, and this is after we had it working successfully, and he had it in pieces all over the floor. And I had to just walk away and say to him, Jeremy, whatever you're going to fix, I know you're going to be able to fix it. You just figure it out. We'll be okay. My first instinct was to panic. Why did you do that? But then I realized that that's what it took for him to learn. He needed that hands-on experience, put it together, take it apart, put it together, take it apart. And I think a lot of parents may not have allowed for that exploration. They would have probably gotten mad and said, hey, what are you doing? We had it working, but I always let him push those boundaries and learn on his own. The second thing we did after he built his first computer is we bought him the components to build a mining machine. So he was able to, the Bitcoin you heard about earlier, he was able to put those pieces, the hardware and the software together in order to do that. Again, it was a gray area for me, but I trusted that I was letting him, again, utilize his talents, and every little thing that we did seemed to build him up a little more. And I also went to my family and my friends and my colleagues, and I told them when Jeremy was 12, 13, 14, I have a son that can build a computer, he can help you set up your printer, he can solve your network problems. And I had just spread the word, and I stood him up in front of adults at a very young age, just to give him the experience that I knew he was going to need. And he was going to need a head start, if you will, in all of this. So I feel that's what I gave him.
And one point I want to make, and then we'll go to your story, Spencer, but the importance of that, I think, you as parents guiding him in the right way, because cyber criminals, so there's two things when it comes to cyber criminals. They require, so yesterday one of the panels talked about all these requirements that we have on people to get into tech, into cybersecurity and tech jobs and all that. Cyber criminals have two requirements. Are you willing to learn, and can you communicate? And not necessarily face-to-face communicate, but just can you communicate over some medium? That's all they care about. They will mentor you, they will help you. So you guys being there to help guide him, I think, is so important. Spencer, so your story, just a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so with my story is I've always been interested in technology. My dad has owned his own IT company, so I've grown up around it. So in high school, there was a monitoring software on our laptops that the school could see exactly what we're doing while we're on their network. Now, of course, I didn't really like that. I wanted to find a way to turn it off, and we weren't supposed to be able to turn it off, but I found a way to block it. And that was kind of my first offense. I got a slap on the wrist saying, hey, don't do that. But then it was the next year, I decided to Google the software again, found the admin panel. So I was able to then see everyone on the network, see exactly what they were doing on the computers, and I had in control of their computers. Didn't actually do anything with it, didn't have any malicious intent at all. I was just curious, did mess around with my friends a little bit, but that was it. The year after that is when the school found out I had the software, got in trouble again. The school knew me pretty well because I grew up there my entire life, so I just pretty much got another slap on the wrist. And then it was my senior year, they installed touchscreen thermostats on the wall that had a 4-digit passcode. So I quickly found out that it was all zeros. They didn't change it all from default passcode. Didn't actually do anything with it, just found the passcode and left it at that. The next day, the AC just happened to quit working. So they were paranoid of what I could do and accused me of hacking it. So they threatened to expel me. Thankfully, again, I kind of knew all the administration. They were upset with me, but they didn't actually take any action against me. So kind of my story.
That sounds familiar, default passwords, how many breaches happen that way, so. And the thing I want to also make clear is, most kids like Jeremy and Spencer, it's not malicious intent, it's curiosity. That's what they're trying to do, is just meet that curiosity and that need. And so, so Jeremy, you got into the network, so what happened from there? How did it progress?
I could go into details, on whatever I did throughout the entire course of the 3 years that this happened.
Okay, so that's the thing, he basically owned the network for 3 years.
Yeah, like I said, I can go on, but the core point that I want to go to is that the school dropped the ball at many points during this process. They failed to educate the kids, or just me in general, about how about technology and anything like that. They don't have courses early enough for kids to learn like that. The second place where they dropped the ball is at towards the end, where they were expelling me. They didn't want to take from me. They didn't want to take from my knowledge on what I knew about their systems. They
didn't want your advice.
Yeah, they just wanted me out of their system, yeah. And last time I checked, locking up people doesn't fix your security problems. So, yeah, so that's one thing. And I've had control from everything from security cameras to door strikes. So it's not just cybersecurity, it's security in general. It's a huge problem, yeah.
And I think you mentioned, Janet, to me, there was another district or somewhere that you know where a similar thing happened, but they handled it in a different way. They actually said, hey, kid that got in, help us fix these problems.
It was probably about 2 weeks after, but what was different about the Bloomfield district hack, if you will, is, well, grades were changed, number one. And number two, the administration from the school came out in front of the hack. So, or just shortly after they found out, where in our school district, it was, well, we've pretty much determined it was a cover-up, because the school district didn't want to. They thought that by telling about what had happened, don't forget, there was a lot of exposure of information in Jeremy's hands, obviously. They didn't want the community to know that that was the case. So we feel that, obviously, there's a lot to our story. We went through the expulsion hearings, and we were faced with a room full of people that did not even understand what really happened. We didn't have a cybersecurity expert. We didn't have anyone analyze the system. We only had administrative people and attorneys. And the attorneys, of course, didn't have the level of expertise they needed to guide the school system in any way, shape, or form. So the school district was left with a sense of fear and panic, and I think that's what drove their decision to expel my son. And I'm here to advocate for other kids too. At first it was a personal journey, but now I feel it's more advocating for kids like the two of you here. There's thousands more.
There's a lot of kids out there.
I mean, we have to get our hands and arms around this, and the school district needs to play a part. And I sit here and wonder why there's only 2 people here. We found our way here, you found your way here. But is it because of shame?
I think that's part of it. I think there's a lot of districts that don't want to address, well, and Spencer and I were talking about this earlier. You know, one of his questions to me was, in the program that you're working on, the K-12 ISAC SOC, are you putting in something in place to address things like this that happen? So just like we talk about incident response for other things, do we have an incident response plan in place so that if it's a kid in the school, how do we deal with it? You know, was it a malicious intent? Was he actually hacking in to there was a recent case where I think the kid, you know, shut down some systems because he didn't want to take a test. Okay, that's malicious intent. But for what, you know, most kids do, there's no malicious intent, it's curiosity. And so what's the plan? How do we put something in place so that when this happens, you know, the kids aren't, so I guess let me ask you, Jeremy, this way, how did you feel when all this was happening and they were saying, oh, you're this bad kid, you shouldn't have done it? I mean, what, you know, how did that?
I mean, it's hard because when they're coming at you with all this heat within an hour that they were already threatening with like search warrants. So I mean, it was stressful for the for the time because of how fast they moved everything. It seemed like they didn't even have time to do a full like forensics on there. Like,
Yeah, so again, no incident response.
yeah, no incident response. So they just seemed to push me out of the school district and have nobody else know. So, I mean, as far as how I felt when it happened, it was very stressful, yeah.
And you as parents,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the fear factor took hold, and I think it's the timing too, like Jeremy was speaking about. It happens very, very fast, and the school district feels the longer the kids are in the school, maybe they'll come back and do more. You know, there's all kinds of free-floating anxiety about that nobody talks about because these kids, you know, obviously had access to, I mean, very damaging things they could have done. But the school district, again, they reacted out of fear, but it was a timing thing as well. To let the kids come back, they probably thought that if the kids were to remain in school, that they could have further access. But they really weren't even sure how to shut down the access they did have, because some of the access Jeremy did have came from our home. I mean, but it, of course, wasn't on hard drives. But anyway, that's what the search warrant was for our hard drives.
well, that would have been the opportunity to say, hey, Jeremy, help us fix the issues.
Yes.
Instead
Would have been a perfect opportunity. Jeremy had already agreed to that, but they did not want his help. They just kept telling him, tell us what you did, but we're going to expel you. So we decided really not to.
And then Spencer, in your case, so you had slightly different, you didn't have that, I guess, that brunt of, hey, you're a horrible kid. And in your case, it was, we didn't expel you for your other two issues, but this happened, and so you're at fault. So again, how was that on you personally, your family? How did that affect you? Hello?
For me, it was just more discouraging than anything because they told me I should not be curious about anything. And going into my freshman year of college, I didn't want to be curious at that point. I didn't find any interested in my classes that had to do with cyber. I ended up transferring because of it. So it was more discouragement. They didn't seem to want and care enough. Now, the network administrator, he knew me pretty well, and he was trying to help me. He set up my own Wi-Fi network and was letting me play around with it. But at that point, it's still very discouraging, and I didn't want to go through with anything. And my dad understood since he's been in IT. He knew what I was doing. He knew I didn't have malicious intent. My mom was one that was more scared because she's like, this is serious. You're messing around with stuff you shouldn't be messing around with. Why are you doing this?
So, and Jeremy, so, one of the things that I guess they didn't do well was, of course, bring you in. I guess, if you were able to say, hey, what are some things that could be put in place for kids? When should they start learning about these things? What should be put in place? And how would you like to see an issue like this dealt with?
So I think it could be prevented, like at all. Like I don't think it should happen at all.
If there was a way for you to,
Yeah, if there was a way for them to implement these kinds of technical classes that may be available in high school and whatnot, like these computer networking classes that are available in 11th and 12th grade, but that's really too late.
yeah. So you say, what grade would you say that should start?
6th grade.
6th grade?
Easily. Because after that, you start to take interest in what you want to do as a career.
And so then going back a little bit what Spencer said, when we were talking, I guess yesterday or earlier, one of the things that you said is, they really came at you as, oh, you're a bad person, you're never going to get a job in technology. I think that was something that was difficult for you to,
Yeah, so definitely in our community, it was just through hearing word of mouth. It was like, oh, this kid's going to go to jail. He's such a bad kid. Don't let him into your house, blah, 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 all that. So, yeah, it was also very discouraging at first, but after like thinking about it for a long time, and it's a very gray area, and after knowing what actually happened, it's a lot more difficult than you think. It's not a clear cut, oh yeah, this kid's a bad kid. It's a lot more than that. So, yeah.
And so now you're in let's say, so where are you at now as your family as far as this whole issue? Is it totally behind you and now you're just able to move on and speak about it? Or are there any lingering?
I mean, I don't think of it as a bad thing anymore. I don't.
Look at it as a learning.
Yeah, I look at it as a learning experience because everything that I've learned is from that incident. So, I mean, I've learned more just from that than I have throughout my entire K-12 career. So, I mean, that's really, I mean, now I'm doing fantastic. I mean, I'm enjoying my vocational school, which I also advocate for. So I think vocational schools are a great thing. I don't think they're pushed enough in high schools, but.
Well, and that's something else that we talked about that I had never really thought about. You know, you mentioned that you talk to other kids, and when you tell them that you're in this vocational school and taking these classes, they're like, "Oh, well, I never even heard of that." And it's
Yeah.
like, why is the school not promoting that? And Janet, one of the things you brought up, which I had never thought about, was, well, is it possible that, you know, because with public school districts, of course, they get paid by the kid that goes to that school. So is it possible that the school district doesn't get money because they go to a vocational school, so they don't promote it as much? So I think these are a lot of the issues that I think need to be addressed in this industry, and when it comes to kids, and like the initiative that I've been working on, and that's specifically what we want to try to do with the K-12 ISAC and SOC, is provide those things, whether it's a class or a real hands-on experience when you get old enough to, hey, you can actually work in a SOC and provide these, you know, tools out to your, and at the same time, so let me ask you this, as you've been here the last couple of days, all the different topics and, you know, risk and legal and all this, how important do you think those things are to start teaching kids as well?
I think everything that was taught or spoken here was relevant to what happened at my school. Cyber insurance, I highly doubt my school had that. But yeah, I think just being here, it's really interesting to hear all these different industries and how they're integrating into education now. Because I mean, being in high school, I don't usually see all these industries, but being here now, I get to see it. And I think that's a lot of things that kids don't get to see. Is a lot of this. They don't get to see the end goal. Right. They don't get to see what their career actually looks like. Right. So yeah.
And then Spencer, how about you? Same question I asked Jeremy earlier. What things do you think that should happen to, you know, keep kids from getting into this position, and what can be put in place?
I feel like a big thing is just classes, is most people don't have a way to learn about all these different skills and learn how to use these skills in a good manner. So that's when they usually take it upon themselves to try hacking into a network or some other.
So you have YouTube and your videos at home, and you have your home network, but that can't really help you practice those skills. So you have no way to and so the school becomes the place where you can do that, basically.
Exactly.
Janet, did you have?
Not as it should be, but again, I'm here to, I find myself here, and hopefully the K-12 community, by telling our story, will pay more attention to what's going on, really going on with their schools, what's going on with the students, and how they can really improve their security policies and practices, because it does affect individuals and families. And we're one of the lucky ones, I think. Like I said, there's probably thousands out there that are shamed and are maybe their desire and their curiosity is now squelched because of what happened to them in school. I mean, I think we have one extreme, and then we have another here, and there's everything in between. So, and I really thank you again for inviting us, and I want to thank Edna too. She said some really kind words to and about Jeremy, and she offered him also a great opportunity, and we're beyond grateful. Thank you.
Is there any questions? Does anybody have any questions? Okay.
Oh, yeah, you
Right.
can.
So, I think it's on, yes. So one of the key areas that I think is interesting, especially in the K-12 through segment, and I don't know if this is a potential program, in a lot of schools you have what you refer to as teacher assistants that help teachers along those lines. Most of these large schools you end up with, they are actually bigger than most small, medium-sized organizations with the number of PCs, the number of electronics and everything else. And they may be sorted by one district, two district IT employees. Is there an opportunity to have an IT TA in those environments where, whether it's school credit or not, and I'd like to open it up to those, if that program was in existence?
It is not, but the K-12 ISAC and SOC thing that I have been working on, that is what I want to accomplish with that, is the ability to say, hey, if your school does not have that skill set, but you have a student that has that skill set, let's utilize that student to meet those needs.
Yeah.
And they can do it and get credit courses or whatever, however it may be done, that's what we can do.
So, and again, I think it comes out that after a year's period of time, you have a student that's taken care of 5,000 endpoints over a year dealing with those things. Would that have interested either one of those if that was an opportunity for you guys to go into?
I mean, the vocational school I attend now, they actually have a program there for like a student tech team. So they actually go around and they do general IT stuff. They file or they solve tickets and whatnot. So that if that was available back in middle school, I would have definitely joined that. That would have definitely been a good thing.
To your point, though, I think more than just a tech support aspect to working with the kids, I think there's a need to create a learning environment that supports the types of things that you were doing. I know of a company in Silicon Valley that has what they call Red Team Tuesday. And every Tuesday, every employee of the company is free to hack the network. And the conditions are that they sign an agreement of what they're doing, that there's no intentional harm to be caused, and that they have to identify and report whatever they find within 24 hours, or they will issue a warrant from the police department. So, and we laugh, but seriously, it's intended to
see,
be
that-
on the up and up.
Right, and you're putting the control in place and giving the
Right.
kid the boundary, and that's what they need is that.
And if you look at the government, for example, where I am, we're all about bug bounty programs now, specifically because we want to know where those weaknesses are. Why wouldn't a school system want to know where there are exposures? It's just a matter of managing the engagement.
Yes.
Right, and I think that they miss a huge opportunity for that because a seated student is going to have a different viewpoint than somebody in an administration building. They're the ones that are using the third-party vendor applications. They're using, they have access to all of the hardware and software. They even have apps on their phones. There's all kinds of things that are rolled out, and then they're just kind of fed to the students, and the students have a great opportunity to give that feedback.
Yeah, but we had one other question over here.
Yes, I was going to say, as much I would love to have a peace of mind in my technology, my house and everything, I think I would get angry if somebody at the middle of the night get into my house just to prove, hey, I got the solution.
Right.
What do you need to be able to feel secure? So I think, as we talked before with you, we need education, we need guidance, especially to the young kids. They don't know what's right and what's wrong. They got access, we give them access to a computer, a very powerful computer, where they can download things from anywhere in the world. And they don't know what to do with this. So we need a lot of guidance. We need to work with the little kids, and we have people like them interested in technology. We have to use them as much as possible too.
I think we'll take one more
I
question.
just wanted to add a suggestion. In Finland, about 10 years ago, we discovered that children are much more tech savvy than the educators. So we implemented a system where selected the students in each class actually are teaching the educators, the teachers, about technology. And I think it's a very successful model, and we should consider talking about that,
No, I
you know,
agree.
when
As
it
a
comes
kind of
to
a
our
training
US K to 12. Yes.
You had a comment on that.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because you know that there's always that one kid in the class who always goes up to the teacher when the smart board's not working. So it's funny that you say that, yeah.
That's your guy.
So I think we're, well, let me just take one more question. I know General Williams has a question up there.
Can you hear me? Oh, yes, absolutely. All right, well, I'm going to kind of take a opposing view, okay? And there's many law enforcement guys in here that heard what you said. I'm also the president of a 20,000-member school district. So I know the process, and people that know me when I've run the cybercrime program, we encourage students to do what they need to do and develop your talents. However, I used to tell them at the end of those training evolutions that you have to do things responsible. And, you know, if you break into something and you decide that, well, I'm curious, but, you know, every school has a code of ethics, and every school has a process. And the reason you got administrators is because it's about adult leadership, and that's not going to change. And the thing is, whether you're Generation Z or whatever generation that you're coming from as far as technology, you know, I don't disagree that it shouldn't be encouraged. But the thing that I've just heard from all of you is that, well, you know, the school didn't treat me well. And at the end of the day, the school has a duty to protect their resources and assets, just like we do at the national level for our national security. And so I think, you know, there's a view of maybe I shouldn't have responsibility for what I've done, and that the school district was not responsible enough to see that I had this talent and only this curiosity. But there are responsibilities and there's consequences to your actions. And you've already dealt with that. And so there's a lot of law enforcement guys here I know that are steaming by what you guys have said. Because
And I don't think we were trying to make light of.
no,
We
I'm
had no
not saying
responsibility.
that, but I'm just saying that I think it, you know, despite the fact that you want to encourage your talent, there's also the recognition of responsibility of action.
Right.
And so when those actions are looked at in a way, and then you don't agree with what the school district did, the school district, and if you had a board hearing, the school district did what it normally would do: suspension or expulsion, okay? And many school districts will allow you to come back. Now, I'm not sure what happened in your case, but there's a board review. And so, now how that all played out for you, I'm not sure, but ultimately, I think, because for those of us that chase down cyber criminals all around the world, you know, we want our students and our American kids to be responsible for what they do. And, you know, if you're going to invade and stop the traffic system and do all these things, and we've got all kinds of examples that occurred here in the Metroplex, they will be pursued by law enforcement. It's just the way it's going to happen. So I think what you have to go back and tell your friends is that, hey, you do have a responsibility. And if you want to be a great cyber technician, is that learn that talent, but also understand the responsibilities that you have with that talent.
Thank you, General Williams. And this, you know, as Superman says, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So be the Superman. Thank you, but no, in all due respect to all that you just shared here, right? So I think it's essential that we understand our capabilities and also take responsibility for those actions. So thank you, great.
We're gonna have, Nick is gonna present these awards.
All right, Nick made it happen, so.
Oh, great. Thanks, Miguel.